It's been a while since we filmed and it's been bloody cold for us to get out there, but look, I'm mustering up the courage and I'm out here today, folks. Well, just got a break in the weather. It's been raining on and off continuously, and I thought just a quick segment just to do a recap on these couple of olive trees that I've got here. Now, in the past I did a little video on pruning one tree and not the other to show the difference between the growth and the regrowth on it. This is the one that I actually pruned and opened it up a little bit. These are young trees. We drilled into the soil and things like that to get the airflow going through, because I actually found that even though it's in a ceramic pot like this, it was holding water, and that was a big concern because obviously olive trees over a long period of time, any plant in fact, if it's sitting in water for a long period of time, you're going to get root rot and eventually the plant will die and never recover. Now, we've come to revisit to show the comparison between this one that I pruned and this one over here. If I can show you, it's got all the long spindly growth on top as well. So it looks like a bigger plant, but in fact it's growing completely out of shape and it needs attention. So the message, folks, is the longer you leave it when it comes to pruning, and this is me who I've got to listen to myself, because you know I don't practice everything I preach, which I should. The longer you leave it when it comes to pruning, the harder it is to get the plant to recover, or sometimes it can take a longer period, and a heavier prune will cause a lot of loss of fruit, or flowers and fruit in the following season. So with an olive tree we're okay, although I can see that we have got some growth coming through, tiny little buds or new shoots about to appear on this one here. Now, if I don't prune it, you can imagine what's going to happen to this. It's just going to grow completely out of control. With that one there, by comparison with that one extra prune I did, is much more stately in its shape appearance. And you can see it's got a lot more vigor on it because it's actually suckering from the base of the trunk. So let's start by removing all these suckers. You can call them water shoots if you like. They're growing from the area of the tree where we don't want them to. And they'll keep sprouting up, and ideally you should get down in there deep below and just tear them off, get rid of the eye, the actual bud where it's coming from, so they don't regrow again. But for you guys now, I'm just going to do it like this because that's all I want to do for now. Anyway, now this tree, look, it's got a great shape to it. I love the shape, but when I think about fruiting trees like the olive trees, even though it's growing in the pot, the actual fruit of the plant won't grow on these upward growths. See all this stuff growing up like that? It's nice and stately, it's strong, it's got a good shape to it, but because these short little branches, they've got that upward sort of vigor in them, which means when it comes to flowering, they're not actually going to set fruit. And it's just, in its nature's way that horizontal or laterally growing branches that have got more of a lean like that will present a better chance of giving you the fruit that you want to see on an olive tree. So upward growth, whether it's an olive, apple, pear, lemon tree, all the above, you get far less fruit production off those branches. So in saying that, that's got a lot of upward growth, but I'm not growing it for that purpose to produce fruit. I'm doing it for, it's almost a bonsai of it. So shrinking the tree's overall size, but giving it a nice sort of stately structure to it. But if I was to think about fruit, well, I'd look at this one here and think, well, I've got more outward growing branches like that, and the longer I leave them, the heavier they become, and the more likely they'll actually bear some fruit as well. But what we don't want in the middle is all this overlapping and growth that's going on here. So let's just thin this out a little bit. Again, you can put this practice to all types of plants, trees that is. Inward growing branches, just got to remove them, folks. Just cut them right off like that. Let's just do that for now before we start taking back any larger structural branches. So upward growth, come off, just get it off there. This is growing across. You can see how it's growing across over this branch. Starts on one side of the plant, ends up on the other. Get rid of that. Okay, I'm not sure if you can see this one. There's a branch, it's sort of a structural branch here. Then you've got this one that's growing across to the other side. So that's the beautiful sort of weep that we want to have, but it's growing in the wrong direction. So I'm going to sacrifice that, like that there. There's one more here. I mean, being a young tree, there's no major risk factor leaving that branch in place. All that will happen is if it gets a bit heavy, they'll rub against each other and then you've got issues. That's where the disease starts to happen, so the damages start to occur. So these ones here are overlapping. I might just cut them down a little bit short, like that. Here's another example. This is growing straight in, folks. Have a look. So this is all because I didn't do that one extra prune that I did on the other plant. So that's growing in there. Now you could say that's caused by the wind because we've got the northerly winds coming through. Has caused the branch to stay in that shape. So that's in the northerly wind too, the other tree. But it hasn't got this problem happening because I haven't allowed these branches to reach out that far. A lot better. We still want to bring the height down. And if I don't bring the height down, you know what will happen? These will grow out even further. They'll just keep growing. You can see the new growth here. That there, as the weather warms up, these will just shoot out more. You'll get more suckers from the middle. These will grow out longer. It'll start to overarch and weep. You probably get a bit of fruit off it, but I tell you, as a pot specimen, it's an ugly thing to look at. So shape them, and let's just get back into it now. Let's just bring it down to a more manageable length. So all these long branches. This one, I'm just going to tip prune this. Like that there. So we've still got that length there. We've got good length here, a little bit too much. Just bring it back a bit. Again here. And while I'm doing this, folks, I just got to remind you about our fruit tree grafting and pruning workshops. Obviously this will be one of the topics, but we've got a lot on the grafting and obviously the soil preparation and the secret in our soil of what it needs to be like, so that we can actually get the quality of fruit and growth on our plants. The workshops are going to be conducted in August, starting from the 1st of August. They're available on our website. Go under the bookings tab and you'll see all the different dates and book your seat in there. They are filling up pretty fast. I wasn't expecting that to happen, but, well, only because it's so cold and miserable out there. People don't think about getting outside, but we're going to be indoors half of the session. Hands-on, you get to see and experience pruning yourself like we did in the last session. And there's a lot of information to share, and hopefully you can go away with some of the new knowledge and put that to practice in your own garden. So I'm just thinning it out, nothing overboard, just cutting it down a little bit. I'm not going to cut it as hard as I did on the other one. I just want to see if I can get more of a weep coming out of this. Taking these down a bit, but yeah, so that's been cut off, but I want a double branch coming out. So you're probably saying, well, if you want it to weep, why are you cutting it off? Well, I don't want it to be one long single leader. I want multiple branches coming off it, and the only way I can trigger that is by doing a tip prune like that. Just cutting it off, don't mind that leaf, then that will coax it into growing more from the buds below, and hopefully you'll get 2, 3, 4 new shoots and you get that height there. And this is an example there, so you can see the growth that's come along. We've kicked into winter, so it's actually stopped, but as we warm up it'll start to grow like the hair on my head. I wish. So you can see this tree now has got a nice upward growth. It's sort of full, and I want it for the ornamental purpose. We've got a couple of extra branches we may have to take away. Well, in fact, I might just take it away now. I don't need that growing up through the middle, and avoiding any overlap or very little of that. So as an ornamental plant, this is going to be fantastic, and that's what I want it for. If I see a little bit of fruit, it's fine. Whereas this one here, I'm growing it in the outward motion, more of a traditional growth on an olive tree, but on a much smaller scale, folks. Much, much smaller scale. That there, again, the wind's causing that. See that shape there? It's been forced to stay that way by the wind. So over time, so I just tip prune it, trigger it so it doesn't keep growing out long and lanky. We get multiple growth, and then eventually, hopefully, we can get it to weigh itself down like that there. So we've got a nice outward growth. This is for a pot specimen, but look, it's still quite dense in the middle. I haven't cut out the guts of it. I'm working with it, so I don't want to grow it like a traditional tree, but almost just dwarf it a little bit. Whereas you can see here where we've got a little plantation of olives in the ground, I want these to grow to about 2.5 meters in diameter, and probably about, well, what am I, 6 foot? Yeah, I'm about there, 6.5 foot, so I want them to be at least about 2.1, just above my head. That's what I want. If we all want something, it doesn't mean I'm going to get it, eh? Anyway, so we want it to be up there where I can arm's reach, which is about 6 foot. That's the top of 6 foot. That's more realistic, right? Get stuffed, all right? But we want to keep this open vase here. Now, these are still growing upright, but remember, these are young trees in my books. They're only 3 years old. And they're starting to fill out. They'll start to thicken up. This here is meant to be the structural branch. So imagine this branch like that, coming out here from there. So we've got a nice thick branch. So this little one here at the moment may stay, may be removed, but we're leaving a few on there so we can have selections going on. So that's one example there, and I've gone really hard on this one here. I've cut the guts right out of this. It's still got a lot of branches on it, but I know what's going to happen come springtime. This is just going to burst back with a vengeance, full of growth in the middle. We'll get some growth on the outside, and eventually we'll pick down to 3 or 4 main branches that we want to keep and create them as the structural, integrity of the tree. And then we'll have our little clusters of flowering branches on the side that'll just weep over, and we get lots of fruit. I say 2.5 meters in diameter. This is already about 1.5. So about here, which is really realistically about 1.5 meters radius. So a 3 meter diameter tree, 2 meters tall. What else do you want? Fresh cold pressed olive oil, table olives, even the salted olives, the shriveled olives, they're to die for. They're to die for. Homemade, not the bought stuff. Seriously, don't. Neighbours, friends, anybody you know who make their own, to die for. The stuff from the supermarkets, I'll eat them. Only if I've got nothing else to eat, which is very, very few times that ever happens. Anyway, back to seriousness. Olive trees, that's just one technique of pruning your olive trees. There are many. You can grow them as a hedge if you like, but when it comes to pruning trees, every tree has a different method and approach to it for the purposes of what you're trying to do, especially fruiting varieties. And if you want to learn about that, we've got our workshops, our fruiting and grafting workshop, and it's not just for edible plants. You can do it on ornamental trees as far as pruning is concerned. You can graft your own as well, weeping trees and so forth. Go to our website, vasilisgarden.com. The tab is the bookings page across the top, the header, and you'll see all the dates. And don't forget, our new bags are coming out next week, so our sale on the clean skin bags will end by Wednesday. And if don't sell them all, that's okay. I'm just going to tear them open and put them in the garden, so I'm going to enjoy them. So otherwise, take advantage of the heavily discounted prices. vasilisgarden.com, and tune into 3AW 693 tomorrow morning, or if you're watching it, well, I'm filming this a day before, so it's tomorrow morning for me, but for you it's right now. Don't waste any more time. 693, 6:30 a.m. From me, Vasili Maresi.